Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this webinar celebrating the involvement of women around the globe in tobacco control. I'm Kelsey Romeo Steppi. I'm the managing attorney at Action on Smoking and Health. Let me start with a big thank you to the Framework Convention Alliance and the African Tobacco Control Alliance for bringing us together to commemorate International Women's Day today, whose theme this year is Break the Bias. A quick housekeeping message before we get started. We will take questions at the end, but please feel free to type them in the Q&A box throughout the webinar. This webinar will be translated into French, English, and Spanish, so feel free to ask your question in any of those three languages. Whether deliberate or unconscious, bias makes it difficult for women to move ahead, and knowing that it exists isn't enough. Action is needed to level the playing field. As many of you know, much of my work is focused on human rights. Women's rights are human rights. Fulfilling these rights is the best chance we have in meeting some of the most pressing challenges of our time: economic crises, violence against women, escalating conflicts around the world, climate change, and lack of adequate health care. The last is particularly relevant to our discussion today because our webinar focuses on tobacco control, a major public health issue. As we celebrate some of the amazing women of global tobacco control today, we also reflect on the challenges that lie ahead regarding our collective responsibility of protecting our populations from the deadly consequences of tobacco. The tobacco industry, as we all know, is the sole vector of the tobacco epidemic. Hopefully, today's webinar will not only celebrate women's involvement in tobacco control, but also inspire women in the tobacco control space to break barriers that may be preventing them from excelling in some aspects of their work. Let me now give the floor to my co-moderator, Sharon, excuse me, of the National Council Against Smoking in South Africa. Hello, Dr. Sharon.
Thank you, Kelsey. Good to see you. We're indeed excited to be part of this great initiative as we celebrate women involvement in leadership in tobacco control. Our thanks go to all those who are following this webinar right here at the Zoom platform and also on the Facebook pages of ATCA and all the other partners that are actually relaying this live. A recording of this webinar will be available in French, Spanish, and English to all those who have registered for this webinar. Now, let us go straight into the business of today and start by discovering those women, the women that we will be actually talking to today. So now please sit back and enjoy this very short video produced specifically for this purpose.
Now we will have a welcome address from Leslie Ray Farrat, the Executive Director of the Framework Convention Alliance.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to provide these opening remarks to this important webinar on gender equality and the contribution that women have made to the tobacco control community. Unfortunately, I was not able to join you all live today for this inspiring event, but I look forward to watching it when I'm back. And apologies in advance because I don't think it's easy for anyone to pre-record themselves giving some opening remarks. So first off, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Leslie Ray Farrat, and I'm the Executive Director at the Framework Convention Alliance for Tobacco Control. The FCA was created in 1999 and was formally established in 2003 and is made up of nearly 300 organizations from over 100 countries today. For those who are not familiar with the FCA, We support the development of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, its protocols and its guidelines, monitor treaty implementation by parties, advocate for sustainable funding for FCTC implementation at the national and global level, and is a leader in advocating for the inclusion of the FCTC and tobacco control in international health and development dialogues. The FCA, alongside over 300 other NGOs working in tobacco control, have been instrumental over the last 15 years in developing robust guidelines, building public and stakeholder support for tobacco control policies, providing technical support to governments in developing national laws and regulations, and by facilitating policy discussion platforms and running advocacy campaigns for policy change. Despite all the fabulous work the tobacco control community has done over the years, there is still much more to do when it comes to accelerating the implementation of the FCTC in all countries. And a similar thing could also be said about gender equality. Much progress has been made to bridge the gender gap over the years, but much more still needs to be done to accelerate gender equality throughout the world. One of the great things about working in tobacco control today is the fact that there is tremendous opportunity for women to demonstrate leadership in our community. That unfortunately still cannot be said for many industries throughout the world and for many women living in various countries around the world. Having myself worked for a number of different international organizations throughout my career, I have witnessed a growing shift toward gender equality in so many areas. But those shifts just aren't nearly enough, nor are those shifts happening fast enough. As a community, we need to continue to move forward together, but move beyond the small steps of yesterday to make leaps and bounds towards the gender equal world of tomorrow. Today, I am so proud to stand alongside so many great examples of women exemplifying leadership in the tobacco control community. The accomplishments women have made to tobacco control globally and within their own countries are many, far too many to sit and list and name all of them today. I could spend the entire event highlighting the multiple successes each and every woman here today has achieved throughout their inspiring careers, but I will leave that to them to share in their lived experiences in the next session. One thing though that is clear to me is that the tobacco control community's future looks very bright under the leadership of brilliant women in the civil society organizations and many others such as Zandilda Limi, the president of the Bureau, elected by COP9, and Dr. Adriana Blanco Marquizo, the head of the Convention Secretariat. The future looks even brighter when considering all other women leaders, advocates, researchers, and so many others working in tobacco control, who each day strive to create a world free from the devastating health, social, economic, and environmental consequences of tobacco and tobacco use. Over the past several decades, it is inspiring to see even more women in leadership positions in the tobacco control community. And I believe that this is a testament to the fact that our sector is becoming increasingly more diverse and inclusive. In the decades to come, the more diverse, equitable, and inclusive we can make the tobacco control community, the better equipped it will be to tackle the challenges of tomorrow. Much like how integrating health systems can make them stronger and more resilient. The more inclusive and diverse we make our tobacco control community, the stronger and more resilient it will be. So this International Women's Day, imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where it's valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge women's equality. Collectively, we can all break the bias. We can celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness against these biases, and take action for equality. Us women have so much to offer in the fight against tobacco, the tobacco industry, and tobacco use globally, and I am so excited to see what the future holds for us and many more young women who come and join the cause. So thank you again, especially to our colleagues at ACTA, for inviting me to speak and providing this opportunity for all of us to talk about the important issue and celebrate all of the outstanding achievements so many women have made and will continue to make to the tobacco control community. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a very successful event.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for that great introduction. Right now, I just want to call on to Debbie. Hi, Debbie, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
So hi, welcome. So you are the head of Global Public Policy and Strategy at the Global Center for Good Governance and Tobacco Control. And you're also the founding trustee of Health Justice in the Philippines. That's not all. In 2012, you were awarded the Johns Hopkins University IGTCI Award for Excellence in Advocacy Work for instituting tobacco industry monitoring activities, which won the Bloomberg Award for Health Justice. That's really inspiring to hear. So talk to us today about some of the challenges that you encountered throughout your tobacco control journey and how you actually managed to overcome them.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for the invitation to this event. And first of all, congratulations to ATCA and FCA for the celebration. I'm honored here to be here along with respected women leaders in tobacco control. When you first asked this question, I was reminded of one of the most challenging assignments in my first few years in tobacco control. It's from a women's rights group who asked me if a woman exposed to secondhand smoke by her spouse can file a case against the Violence Against Women Act. There were no studies to this effect at all. There was a study showing women exposed to domestic violence are likely to smoke, and that domestic violence is an abusive pattern linked to impulsive effects of addiction. So domestic fights tend to arise when men are spending the limited household budget on cigarettes instead of on food and children's education. So I had to craft an argument from scratch. I said, each year, 600,000 women fall victim to secondhand smoke. Many are exposed from their partners who smoke. And if these men deliberately expose their spouse or partners to secondhand smoke, it's a form of physical and emotional abuse that can be a ground for a complaint against the Violence Against Women's Act. It's unfortunate that women are not empowered with this information because of the smoke screen of tobacco industry's so-called CSR. But I wanted to share an outcome of that work. Could you see my slides?
Yes, I do. I do see them.
Thank you. Hold on. Can you see my slides?
Yes, I can get it.
All right, thank you. The Women's Media Circle, made up of women journalists who gave me this assignment, framed it quite differently, but made a point that it is a ground under the Violence Against Women's Act. But more importantly was that they showed their support for the advocacy by enlisting their champion policymakers, Pia Cayetano, Riza Hontiveros, to support tobacco control. And until now, we have these two champions who supported us from graphic health warnings to syntaxes to health promotion. In hindsight, I realized that I have always been working amidst male-dominated policymakers, many of whom fraternize with the tobacco executives. So they tend to appear like brotherhood. But typically there would be one or two women, and they would be a staffer or a corporate affairs or comms persons. Recently, there are news about tobacco companies with top employer or gender equity awards. So I looked up the websites of big tobacco companies, and really just looking at the top of the fold, we could see that it's male dominated. There are about 1 to 2 women in the top leadership position, typically having communications roles. And when I searched further on women and tobacco employment, I saw promotional girls. Note that there's no such thing as a promotional boy. Only women are stereotyped to sell deadly products to lure young adults. So for certain, it doesn't help women's advocacy to be portrayed as a bad influence or a bearer of deadly products. Even more troubling was when I searched further on women employment and tobacco and found that over half of those working on tobacco farms are women. And so I see an even greater injustice with women suffering from green tobacco sickness, exposed to elements under the harsh sun, and on the other hand, posh executive positions with fat paychecks occupied mostly by men. STOP has this briefing on women in tobacco industry if you want to learn more, but what I really want to share is what I find inspiring, because the tobacco control community is really women-led. Even starting in the early 90s, the idea of the FCTC came from a paper written by Alan Taylor, whom later on, to my great fortune, became my professor in Georgetown. And then Ruth Romer, a lawyer and an activist, picked up on the idea, and together they discussed the potential for a framework convention on tobacco control. Then came the iconic advocate, Judith Mackay, whom I'm proud to say is currently an advisor to GGTC. She brought the right people together in the tobacco control community, which resulted in a strong demand for the treaty. And it was during the leadership of another great woman, Dr. Brundtland in WHO, that this idea prospered. She threw in the support needed to bring this treaty to life at the World Health Assembly. And the WHO made immense progress in countering tobacco industry interference during the 10 years or so of Dr. Chan's leadership. There are many women leaders in tobacco control in different parts of the world, but in the Southeast Asian region, tobacco control advocacy would not have taken off in the past 2 decades without the hard work of Bong-on and Mary, whom I had the honor of working closely with to prevent the tobacco industry from benefiting from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement, and with whom I'm proud to say, along with treaty negotiations rockstar Nanta Barn and myself, or founding members of GGTC. GGTC is a partner of STOP, a tobacco industry watchdog, and also serves as the designated Secretariat's knowledge hub on Article 5.3. We have the distinct privilege of working closely with the Framework Convention Tobacco Control Secretariat, which is led successively by 2 brilliant women leaders dedicated to countering tobacco industry interference, Dr. Vera Costa and Dr. Adriana Blanco. In the Philippines, our strongest tobacco control champions are women. And when I worked with the civil service to adopt a code of conduct that's aligned with Article 5.3, our joint memorandum circular, I had the privilege of working with Commissioner May Mendoza, who is also a women empowerment champion. She was instrumental in the adoption of the policy on Article 5.3, the JMC. Looking back at this photo a decade ago, I realized that I did try to balance out the male domination by surrounding myself with women when I was leading Health Justice. And it was with all these women who were behind the organization when Health Justice won the Bloomberg Award for Global Tobacco Control. Even now, I'm proud to say that I'm surrounded by many fabulous women in our superb team at GGTC. I really have to apologize for using slides, but I think this is a great way to celebrate Women's Day. It really matters that there are courageous women leaders to look up to, and I've drawn a lot of strength from their courage because countering tobacco industry interference is not easy. There are many more women who have broken the glass ceiling in tobacco control. So it's a much easier journey now for women than ever before. Thank you for allowing me to celebrate Women's Day with all of you.
Thank you, Debbie. I think that was really an interesting conversation there. And you're talking right there of the history of women in tobacco control and just how they've made it much more easier, for us women to actually be taking part in tobacco control work. But I just wanted to just give you a follow-up question, just a single question there to talk about what about personally as yourself, do you feel that there's more that can be done to alleviate challenges for women, for them to actually work in tobacco control?
Sorry, I don't hear you very well. It's chopping up. Can you say that again?
Sorry, Debbie. I was saying I wanted to hear from you to just your insight on whether you think that there is much more that can be done to actually make it easier for women to work in tobacco control.
All right. Of course, the work doesn't stop, right? I think a lot of women have done the great work to make it easy, but of course, we all have a big role to play to really bring in more women into our cause. And I think we've been very powerful with women, and then we could do more.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for those lessons and for those insights. Now I'll cross over to Emanuela from France.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sharon. And thank you for ATCA and for the FCA for the invitation to participate to this webinar. I'm very happy and so now for me to be present with you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So you are the director of the National Committee Against Tobacco in France, the first organization in France to be officially recognized as committed to the prevention and protection of people from tobacco harm and also from tobacco industry interference. You are also a laureate of the WHO World No Tobacco Day Award 2016. Great work. So now, in the past 2 years, there's been a lot of media reports indicating that fewer and fewer people are smoking in France. We know that there are initiatives like the Moi Sans Tabac, where amongst other things, women are specifically being called upon to give up smoking. So now tell us more about France's efforts to curb the smoking rate and also how women have been specifically involved in this process.
Ok, je vais peut-être répondre maintenant en français.
We'll respond in French. Indeed, Sharon, in France, there a reduction of tobacco consumption over the past few years, in particular, a diminution of consumption among women. That's an important contribution of civil society and by women, like elected women or women that are involved at level of administration, councils, that have worked hard to reduce the consumption of tobacco. In 2016, there was 26% of women between 18 and 75 years old that consumed tobacco each day, and the rate was brought down to 22% of women, and also a reduction of consumption among younger women. In 2014, and they were 34%, and in 2017, 24% were smoking. So it's an important reduction, even though it's still too much. I would like to summarize. There are a series of measures that were adopted to bring women to stop smoking. First, we insisted a lot the importance of taking care of the treatment of tobacco consumption, which is covered by the health system, and also the prescriptors, the people working in the health system that can prescribe, do some prescription for the treatment of tobacco. Not only doctors, but also nurses and other employees in the health system can give subscription to use drugs to stop smoking. There's also each year there's the operation of the month without tobacco in France that happens each year in France that calls on women to stop smoking each month. So it's a campaign that really helps and give measures and offers opportunities for women to stop smoking. So this process has called on women to start smoking, and this collective and mutual support strategy, women are very involved. The invitation to cessation of smoking, the strategies implemented, what we've put forward is what we call the demoralization of the tobacco industry, because tobacco among women has been developed thanks to very aggressive strategies from the tobacco industry towards women. It was obviously in the context of giving more rights to women, including smoking, putting forward a glamour image of smoking that still exists today. It's important to break those kind of imageries of empowering of women through smoking. So we develop strategies and make possible to hear the voices of women that want to break this appearance of being strong because of smoking, showing concretely, for example, that today in France, some categories of age are touched and impacted by diseases like lung disease, lung cancer, and women are at the center of those diseases, are most impacted by these diseases, or also the breast cancer. So in order to break this context, many measures were adopted through initiative of cessation and efficient measures have been put forward to bring women to stop smoking. Women are usually in a situation with less income compared to men. So in order to adopt the cessation strategy, we've been very efficient to incite women to stop smoking. We also implemented the measure of a neutral packaging. We had developed some studies that showed that the cigarette packaging that many women were making collections of those cigarette boxes because it looked like it was a great collection and glamour. So we broke also and attacked this behavior in order to bring women to stop smoking, and also the measure to move out of certain locations in society of the right to smoke, for example, in public parks, in internal spaces, and also in state to create a specific location to help stop smoking. At the European level, some measures were adopted, also in interaction of publicity and interaction of multiplication of different flavors and savors, like flavors that had some scents that were quite feminine, related to perfumes, and were targeting women. So the interdiction measures really allowed to reduce the expansion and the presence of tobacco in the society, and also bringing forward measures, funding processes towards the tobacco industry. For example, using entry points and with a specific association working with beaten women and promote tobacco control and stop smoking measures towards women. So there are many measures that have been implemented, as I've just mentioned. And today we are in a period of stagnation. We need to still monitor and make sure that those policies produce results. So that's basically the overview of what's being done in France so far.
Thanks so much, Emanuela, and really great work in declamorizing tobacco use amongst women in France. I'll now cross over to Kelsey.
Thanks, Sharon. Please excuse my voice, everyone. I have a little cold. Celine, I have a question for you now. Celine, are you there? Yes, okay. You are the Chief Executive Officer at the International Institute for Legislative Affairs, Kenya, and a board member at the African Tobacco Control Alliance. Your work in tobacco control is around advocacy to support effective implementation of the FCTC and the National Tobacco Control Act in Kenya. In Africa, the rate of women taking up smoking is increasing dramatically. Women are especially consuming products like shisha, and we know that the tobacco industry is coming up with novel products and strategies to initiate women and children into smoking. What do you think Africa must do to mitigate this problem?
Thank you very much, Kelsey. First, I'd like to appreciate very much the FCA and ATCA for putting together this wonderful webinar. And also, I feel very honored to be in the midst of very esteemed ladies in tobacco control. majority of whom I read about first before getting into the space. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and happy International Women's Day to all the women in the house at this moment. So yes, Kelsey, as you mentioned that tobacco use and women, and especially in Africa, have some interesting dimensions. So whereas generally in the world, the prevalence of smoking is reducing, we see the number of smokers increasing because of population growth. At the same time, majority of the smokers or users of tobacco products reside in low and middle income countries, including Africa. And tobacco use and tobacco production, starting from production at the farm level, and Debbie talked about this, puts women in a situation of inequality and injustice because it disproportionately affects them from different angles, starting from how they are affected by engaging in the farm work, all the way to marketing and use of these products. And particularly in Africa, we see that because of the fact that the smoking rates or tobacco use rates among women is globally lower compared to how it is amongst men, this puts this group in a precarious situation, because then they are a prime target for the industry for, as they're looking or acquiring a new clientele or a new group, a new customer base. And this is particularly among women and children. And the trend at the moment is that, there's the aggressive and predatory marketing of these new technology products, or the novel products that are intentionally and deliberately designed by the industry to appeal to women and the children by use of contemporary and sort of feminine packaging and marketing approaches, use of flavors that are appealing to women and children. And this has been documented, for instance, in the 2021 WHO report on the global epidemic, global tobacco epidemic that was released a few months back, that found out that there are up to 16,000 flavors in the tobacco market, and majority of these flavors are actually appealing to children. So it is a deliberate strategy by the industry to hook women and children in the nicotine addiction epidemic. And women are also kind of disadvantaged because even at the household level, they are the ones who are affected more by passive smoking and exposure to other harmful effects of tobacco at the various stages of the supply chain and the marketing chain of tobacco products. Apart from that as well, when households divert the household income to tobacco use, then the effects are borne more by women and children, because then the household income is reduced, and the burden of healthcare resulting from the use of tobacco products also increasing the pressure on the little income that the household have. And most of the time it is the women and children who suffer. And when we see how tobacco use and production is connected with the global agenda of sustainable development and the SDGs, then we see also how much this further speaks to the fact that tobacco control measures have the opportunity to support global population, and particularly women and children, to also advance and achieve most of the, if not all of the Sustainable Development Goals. We look at SDG 3 on health, SDG 2 on education, we look at the SDG on gender inequality, all of which tobacco use and production threaten their realization. So looking at some of the action points or strategies that Africa can adopt or can think through to reduce or address these issues, that the challenges that we have with the industry targeting women and children with tobacco. Number one, because of the fact that there's that shift from in the industry, moving from the conventional tobacco products to these new technology products, which are majorly marketed on social media and online platforms. Then some of the things that Africa can do, and our stakeholders across the continent, led by government, is to strengthen policy interventions to effectively regulate advertisement and the marketing of these products online. This is a gap that the industry has noted and is manipulating and exploiting fully, because majority of countries do not have very explicit or clear laws on regulating marketing of these channels, whereas we have laws prohibiting marketing and sale of and advertisement of products in the traditional mainstream media. This is one area that African governments need to prioritize and initiate, formulate, and implement effective measures that are meant to strengthen or reduce and even eliminate marketing of these products on social media. The other intervention that African governments and actors should be able to do is to make deliberate efforts towards adopting and implementing policy interventions that actually protect women. So, bringing that gender aspect in our policy making process, so that we protect women from the harmful effects of tobacco and tobacco use. Whereas we have, in most countries, we have prohibition of smoking in public places, we still see a lot of household women and children at the household level exposed to passive smoking or secondhand smoking. And these are some of the areas that should be strengthened. And this can be done through increased education, increased awareness, and making cessation and rehab services more available to smokers who would want to quit, or users of tobacco products who would want to quit. And then this would deepen and strengthen protection of women and children from passive and secondhand smoke. Another action point or strategy that African governments and tobacco control actors should think through and adopt is strengthening the policies and tobacco control regulations around packaging and marketing of products, and particularly, consider banning use of flavors or use of packaging features that are particularly targeted to women and children. So one other option, other actually working strategy that African countries and stakeholders need to consider is actually adopting plain packaging, which has been is known to be effective in reducing the appeal of tobacco products to the public. And if this can also be applied across these new products, then that would be a big plus, because that is where most women and children fall prey by the from the industry tactics in hooking them to nicotine addiction. Then another option or another strategy that Africans can, as Africa, we can think about as a continent, is to deepen and strengthen implementation of the FCTC, because the goal of the FCTC is to protect the public and to protect women as well from the harms of tobacco use, starting from the farm level all the way to marketing and advertisement of these products. So we need to strengthen our policies, we need to strengthen implementation, and we need to always have that gender lens in the policies that we make in the implementation. So thank you, Kelsey, back to you.
Thank you so much. I have some questions for you, but I'll save them till the end because I know we're running on time. And I wanted to remind the audience to please put any questions you have in the Q&A box. So now I want to move to Maiwa. Maiwa, you're the founder and former director of LENA and the Green Hand Society in Jordan, and a board member of the FCA. your organization has received lots of very well-earned local and global awards for its contributions to curbing global epidemics, such as tobacco and cancer control. Can you tell us about your interventions targeting women in the region?
Thank you very much, Kelsey, and it's an honor to be with all of you. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to each one of you, and happy Women's Day. For the one who does not know, Jordan located in the heart of the Middle East, and it's one of the youngest population of the world, with 63% of its population under the age of 30. 37.1 of this statistic located around schools, which is a high school and universities. When we started 2006 with the Alina and Girhan Society, we needed to work with youth in order to work with them and to exploit the problems around their society. And of course, tobacco control, tobacco were one of our projects. When we start working around schools, there is no way to reach out these youth, age group, but through their moms. So it's a Women's Day. So I would like to emphasize the role of the women who we worked with, not only me. And we reached out for this age group through their moms. So we were able to build a youth network around schools and universities with the help of mothers who gave us their children and organized their timing according to our work. We were able to customize different toolkits for different age group, because in Jordan, tobacco usage is a very big problem. And at that time we had like only one size fits all, so to speak, programs. So we were able to, with assistance with the global foundations, do customization to local programs. Also, we worked with all stakeholders, and we worked with the government on the formation and separation of a public health law. And we worked with the government on the implementation as well, and we're still working with them on that. If we talk about women's and empowerment and leading women from Jordan, I would like to recognize Princess Dina and Meraid, Princess Ghaida, and also Princess Alia. And it's for their support that we were able to move forward and try to recognize tobacco control and push government to the implementation of the public health law. In 2011, when we became members of the FCA and we were introduced formally for the FCTC, we worked with the WHO and also with the WHO, the Empower strategies. We worked closely with them, and we formalized many trainings for the university students as well. And we kept pushing for the elimination of the tobacco industry, and try to emphasize that the government need to implement all articles with no exceptions. When we moved to cancer control and our involvement with the global NCD, we were able, after getting the proper training with them, we were part of the founding members for the National Alliance as well as the Regional Alliance. All our work revolves around involving the society and building network with everybody. If you ask me what differentiate us from other societies, or what as women's group who work at the Alina and Girhan Society, I would tell you our base were think globally, we're acting locally, and also we emphasize that women raises half of the society while influencing the second half. So we worked with women and tried to empower them, especially as my colleague said that there's a big problems with women who take smoking and their husbands, and Debbie, as Debbie said, they are exposed to second-hand smoking around their house. So we try to work with them and empower them with the proper training and information and tools, so they can at least elevate this problem in their home. Another thing we are doing, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So we found out that the only way to cut red tapes and reform work and get the act done is through the people who you know. So it became the women who have their husbands as in power, in positions, that we reached out to them, and we were able to reform faster than any other societies and get more of the involvement of the public, and try to get some work done in terms of the tobacco control. Of course, now with the SDGs, we work with all societies in Jordan and make sure that our government strategies in line with the SDGs and hoping to get the goals done by 2030, which is, make the tobacco less usage in the world. So in a way, of course, we are blessed, as I love the presentation that we showed, to know all these influential women, the great women, the warrior, who we learned a lot from them. And I try, me and along with my colleagues in Jordan, to learn from them and implement some of their power here and try to get more women working with us and more youth working with us, so the tobacco control become very important issues that we all work on. Nowadays, for the past 3 years also, we worked with Siatka and the STOP on, we are the publisher of the Jordan report on tobacco industry interference, which is in line with 5, of course. The base is Article 5.3 from the FCTC, which is addressing the tobacco industry and their impact in the countries. And we're trying to lobby through not only the government here, also educate the, because I'm the board member of the region, in all our activities, the global activities and the COP meeting, we educate and work with the government personnel who attend and try to work with them on the agenda for this meeting. Of course, the last thing I would say that networking and collaboration between the societies and forming alliances is the only way to move forward, in terms of tobacco control. And I'm blessed to say that we women, of course, we are the backbone, I think, when it comes to civil society and performance and accomplishing work. So thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this a very important day. And back to you, Kelsey. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maiwa. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Kelsey and Mauya. I'll now speak to Patricia. Hello, Patricia.
Hello. Sorry.
Okay. Welcome. So you have a global and high-level experience in tobacco control. As the director of the Latin America and Caribbean program of the Campaign in Tobacco Free Kids. You're also the Latin America director of the Global Health Advocacy Incubator. You've even met with the president of Uruguay to discuss some of the tobacco control issues. So if you were to advise a young woman or young women in general engage in policy advocacy, what would be your key messages?
Thank you again. What an honor to be part of this panel of incredibly accomplished women. Again, thank you. And what a wonderful question. Because I was a young person once who benefited from a lot of mentorship in order to enter this world and sustain my involvement. I would say the first thing that motivated me, and I will encourage the young people and young women in particular to look at, is the data. How the industry is targeting our young women and what that means for their lives, particularly those that become addicted at a very early age, the health implications, including premature death and diseases that are so cruel, like emphysema, which basically drown alive. So that motivated me a lot. To get involved, and I encourage the young people to look at it to understand how much we are the target of the industry. Second, mentorship. I benefited from a lot of very strong women. Some of them have already been recognized. The relationship with Vera Luisa da Costa, with Adriana Blanco, who's been my mentor on diplomacy, on how to interact in the international arena. I'm always very grateful for Adriana to do that, and I'm very proud to see them leading the FCTC as incredibly capable women that they are. Beatriz Champagne, who has been a regional leader for decades. She was there when I arrived almost 15 years ago and have mentor so many people, not only at the regional level and the local level. I have also benefited from collaborations right now, and I think that's important, not only the mentorship, but really also the collaboration is very important, that sisterhood in terms of being in the struggle together, because it's not easy. The tobacco industry is relentless. And when we think we have achieved something, like we got a law going or we get the regulation, for example, on smoke-free or tobacco advertising ban, the industry very quickly turn around and try to undermine what we're doing, whether they're suing us for the law, claiming it's unconstitutional, or undermining through interference in government process on the adoption of regulations. So you need that collaboration. And I want to thank colleagues like Rosa Sandoval from the Pan American Health Organization, Monica Andrei from Brazil, she's the director of ACT Brazil, Flavia Radovic from COLAT Peru, Marita Pizarro from FIC Argentina, Blanca Llorente, a researcher in Colombia, or Luz Miriam Reinales, a researcher in Mexico. These are examples of the women in my region that play important roles and have developed this collaboration. We have made a lot of progress in our region. So I would say to young people, this is an area in which you can make a difference. That's been for me the greatest joy of this work. It's a work that have meaning, and beyond having meaning, because you know you're on the right side of science and health and really the side of quality of life and human rights. We are making a difference. As you know, PAHO has projected that the region of the Americas may be the only region that will meet the reduction of 30%, relative reduction of 30% of consumption by 2025. And we've seen the adoption of very strong laws, particularly related to smoke-free and warning labels all throughout the region. So that is exciting, no? To see that we work and that we make a difference. But I would say I will encourage the young people to join the effort, because we have a long way to go, long way to go, even in a region that the numbers show success. First, the industry is always trying to undermine what we're doing. So this is a never-ending project. And there are policies in which we need to make much more progress, and they have particular impact on women. I want to talk about the fact that we're very behind. Only 4 countries in my region have adopted complete tax bans. And what we see is the reason why we're not made progress in those policies, because the industry fights really, really hard, is the way that they seduce young smokers, particularly young people, to initiate, particularly young women. And we're seeing a very aggressive use of social media, and particularly influencers, and many of these are young women. And not only in terms of conventional products, which are still the products mostly consumed in my region, but new products. There's an aggressive effort to increase a new product market in the region. And the target of those new products are many of them young women. So we really need to make progress. We need new blood, energy, to help us counter the industry and adapt to these new strategies that the industry is using in the region. The other issue that we really need to address in my region is low socioeconomic sectors, and the fact that we live in one of the regions with the highest levels of inequality. And we do need to address the issue of smoking among low socioeconomic, and we know particularly women, as we know, in Latin America, the region of the Americas has the second highest smoking rates among women after Europe, with Chile, Uruguay, and Argentina having the highest smoking rates among women, and Chile in particularly having, I believe, as the recent data that I saw, the highest smoking rates among young girls between the age of 10 and 15 in the world. So we do have a real big challenge in terms of countering the industry. Unfortunately, we can declare an industry success in penetrating the female market in my region. And one of the policies that I think we need to strengthen, and the industry also fights so hard against the work that we're doing, is increasing the price of cigarettes through tobacco tax policies. And we have a very strong fight on increasing tobacco taxes. We think it's an important intervention, particularly to help us address the issue of consumption among low socioeconomics. The data is quite clear. We have a lot of really incredible research and economists, particularly female economists, that have been working on this issue. So we know that that is one of the strategies that we need to pursue in order to reduce consumption. So there's a lot to be done. We need a lot of young, energetic, creative people. And I would say the presence of female leadership in my region is evident, and it's made a huge impact in how we operate, and also I believe in why we have been so successful as a region. So I will leave it there, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Patricia. There we have it. There is still a lot of work to be done, but I found it very inspiring when you talk about, increasing informed citizenry. People must know about the data, about the harms of tobacco, about how industry is targeting women, but also how it emphasizes mentorship and how women can lean on each other and also actually advance each other. So please keep putting in the questions in the Q&A section. At the moment, we're now going to our question and answers, where we pose questions to our panelists. And at the moment, I'll go over to Kelsey to bring in the first question.
Thanks, Sharon. This sort of builds off of what Patricia was discussing, but it's a question for everyone. I have largely been mentored in tobacco control by men, by very supportive, very feminist men, but they're men, and it's different sometimes. So I was curious what the panelists think men as mentors can do to support women tobacco control advocates. Maybe Patricia, can we start with you?
Yes, of course. Oh, I mean, we're celebrating women empowerment, so we focus on women, but of course, the tobacco control movement is comprised of both genders, and yes, it's really important that that we do have collaborations with men that are respectful of the role of women and appreciate not only the individuals that they have to interact and mentor them also in terms of allowing them to play key leadership roles, but are sensitive to the policies that are impacting women in particular. So we can, because the industry does that, no? The industry is very targeted in terms of their strategy. So we also need to be targeted in terms of what we think the solutions are. But men can definitely be very helpful. I have very positive experience, and I want to acknowledge Dr. Eduardo Bianco, who's been a leader in our region. He was the regional director for FCA in Latin America for many, many years, a wonderful mentor and a beloved leader of our community.
Did other panelists want to add?
Can I add something, Kelsey?
Yes, please.
I think women, they can empower women and give them the space to work with the kids, especially the kids around school, because I know that I live in a third world country, and I believe that tobacco use is engraved in the environment and in the DNA of the people here. So if women given a space to move and maneuver and set the base around the house, I think that would be great. That would be a step forward, that men, at least they don't smoke in the house. So they don't expose their kids for the secondhand smoke or third-hand smoke. That would be a step forward to at least elevate the impact of tobacco and its harm from around, the kids and the base, which is the house. Thank you.
Sharon, I don't know if there are other questions. I have one more. Should I go ahead, or do we have others?
Okay, so I do have a question as well. For example, I think Patricia, I did mention that she did meet with with the Uruguayan president, and even Maui was talking about how she has worked with mothers So I really wanted to know from your experience, how has it been with working with women champions? So women, female policymakers, be it ministers, presidents, how has it been? Has the experience been different? That's really my question.
Since I already spoke, I think I want to leave other panelists the opportunity to comment.
Please, I don't know, Emmanuel, whether they want to come in, or any of the panelists who have been working with female champions.
I have wonderful examples. We just passed the biggest accomplishment of the year for us was the adoption of the smoke-free law in Mexico, the second largest country in Latin America. We worked for a decade to get that bill through Congress, and our champion in the House of Deputies, Dr. Carmen Medel, was absolutely fearless. They threw everything at her. The industry just attacked her personally in every possible way you can think of, and she was so strong and so committed, and so inspired by her own personal story. So it was great, but I have also worked with really wonderful men, and I have also seen opposition coming from women. So being a woman itself does not assure you that you're going to be a good tobacco control advocate, but we have a lot of really very strong female advocates, and particularly among legislators.
Thank you, Patricia. I don't know if any of the panelists want to give it a go. Otherwise, Kelsey, you can come in.
Okay, my question is for everyone, but probably Debbie and Emmanuel. I know you've given this some thought before. I work largely in the human rights sphere, and a question I get asked very frequently is, there are a lot of human rights issues impacting women. Sexual and reproductive rights, violence, a lot of really horrendous things happening around the world. Why does tobacco control matter as a women's rights issue? And I would love to hear what you think.
Maybe I could start, and Emmanuel could add. Actually, I've encountered exactly the same thing, right? When working with women's rights groups. And I think, and that's why they had asked me that question, right? They want to link it to the existing pressing concerns that they have. And it's possible, right? I think it's a matter of educating them that the harms of tobacco, result in, women falling victim to secondhand smoking, right? And children being affected. So, but all these things, I think because of the long latency, right? It takes a long time before these things happen, that they don't realize the pressing need. But I think they just need to understand, right? So it doesn't mean that, it's lesser than being slapped in the face, right? It's not, because, being exposed every day to secondhand smoke, you could die from it, right? I mean, I don't think people would die from being slapped in the face. And, it's just really hard to see how important it is right now, at least for some women. But the more that we sort of raise that awareness among women champions, I think the better that we'll get there. And so I think among us in tobacco control community, we know how it is, right? We know that it's important, but it's about us communicating to the group. And I've seen also the challenges, because there's really a lot of things that they're really concerned about: human trafficking, and, as you said, reproductive health. But I'd like to think that, there are always ways to it. So for instance, in our case, our biggest women champions in tobacco control were actually champions in reproductive health. And one of the come-ons, right, that they thought, that was very useful for them, and that's why they would always latch on to the tobacco control advocacy, was the sin taxes. So they knew that the sin taxes could fund work on reproductive health ultimately. And so that's another way that we managed to get our champions really, in a way, supportive throughout on tobacco control, because it's linked to health promotion ultimately, and financing health promotion in a sustainable manner. So yeah, I guess that's my part for it. And maybe Emmanuel can add.
Oui, effectivement, par rapport à la question du droit des femmes.
Indeed, on the question of women's human rights, women are very much targeted by the tobacco industry with their products. It takes some time to have an awareness about the situation. I already talked about it. Traditionally, the tobacco industry, through its corporate social responsibility strategies, target women organizations. When there was a linkage with those associations, it was really hard to tackle the issue because of the funding. Somehow it's quite important to fund strategies and show how the tobacco industry affects and impacts women's human rights. For example, on the topic of cessation for women, it shows how it improves their quality of life and acknowledgement of their rights. It's also important to highlight is that tackling the question, the issue to other actors, it allows to attract new forces behind the cause and stimulate funding and also build collective projects, for example, taxes with monies that are then channeled towards the battle against smoking, and also joint strategy with other actors, alliances that favors awareness creation.
Thank you so much, Eva. There's also another question in the chat, in the Q&A, sorry. And it is, how can we encourage more women to join tobacco control? Is there any way we can have female focus groups for this? So I'm sure I want to give it a go first. Celine?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Sharon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, so that is an interesting question and a good one as well. So, and I think we've already been given some ideas on how to, encourage and bring more women, some of the strategies that we can use to bring more women in tobacco control. And also, just the example that that Debbie has shared on how they used the women in the reproductive health space to be the champions to advocate for, better and increased funding for tobacco control. So I think looking at it from the perspective that, women are at a high risk of, the harmful effects of tobacco, right from cultivation all the way to marketing and advertising, I think should be motivation enough for, us to want to bring the change that, would like to be the change that we'd like to see. So I think that is one way, as was suggested, that, just looking at the data and seeing how women are disproportionately placed and, in terms of the inequalities and injustices that they suffer as a result of tobacco cultivation and the entire supply chain. So in terms of specific causes, yeah, that's a good idea. We have colleagues here from GGTC and other partners. I think that's something that is worth thinking through, if it's possible to have causes that are female focused. But one thing for sure, there is need for more research
They froze.
I can no longer hear Celine. Sharon, can you?
No, I can't hear her. At first, it was my side. So I couldn't hear the last part of her comment. Perhaps we can go back to her when she's back online. I'm not sure whether there's any other panelist who wants to answer the question.
Are you opening for any comments on that question, Sharon? Can I comment?
Yes, Patricia.
Sorry, I feel like I commented a lot, but I do want to comment about this because I think it's a very important question. I would say in my region, there are organizations that are only run by women. We have a very, very strong presence of women in the tobacco control movement. So how do you increase the number of women in tobacco control? In some ways, it's just do a job opening and they will come. But for me, that's important. And imagine in some countries it's different. So I have to respect that we have different experiences globally. And so there may be issues of recruitment that need to be addressed in some of the countries. But in my region in particular, the challenge is not so much the employment of women in tobacco control. I think the challenge is having other women's groups understanding that tobacco control is a women's issue. I think they still, in some countries, seeing the women's agenda very much focused on certain issues of domestic violence, of income issues, and on health, very focused on access to healthcare and the preventive side, and particularly the tobacco control impact, still an issue that we need to convince them that is part of their agenda. And you're talking about countries like Chile, in which you have the highest smoking, some of the highest smoking rates among women. So even though they're seeing it, they still not have made that link. We made a lot of progress, tremendous amount of progress. So if you ask me if there's a need to develop a women-focused approach, is to really strengthen that connection between tobacco control, women's rights, women's health. We made lots of progress. I have examples of great coalitions that have done collaborations with reproductive health advocates, which has been wonderful, but much more of that needs to happen.
Thank you, Patricia. Also, I have a question. I think that's the last question that we'll take. And the question is from Nancy. They say, being a low middle income country, India has a high prevalence of tobacco use, mainly smokeless. Amongst females, that's about 20% in India. And the majority are from low socioeconomic groups and poor literacy rates. So what can be done to curtail prevalence rates among this population? Debbie, you want to give it a go, or Mauya?
I'm sorry, yeah. I think being from middle income countries, there's a lot can be done, but we need first to start by the basic block, which is educating the public and educating certain groups, especially women. With education, we can go as far. And one of the major things is not only not having women in the cause, it's just keeping them interested and keep them staying with us on the cause and working with us around this. The most important thing is to work with the government and the laws and regulation. And then after that, we can take it from there. I mean, it's all connected with each other. There is no one size fits all. You need to customize the plan for your country, and you need to study and see what's going on, be it the laws, be it the cessation, be it the taxation, and it's all connected together. There is no such thing as we can give you like a magic portion where you can just implement it in your country. I mean, it's like, look at it from city to city, it's vary, from school to school, it's vary, university to university. So I would go back and say education, the FCTC and all its articles, because it's the only treaty that have all the answers. And if you work with all in partnership with everybody, you can have, results. Okay, it might take time, but of course, first step is the most important thing, and you can take it from there. Thank you.
Right, and maybe just to add to that, Mawa, she's already said everything, but I think that there is a strong emphasis on tobacco taxation. I think if you increase the prices, you will reduce the uptake. I think that's the first thing that needs to be done. And I'm just reminded in terms of model women. I remember on the first year of my joining tobacco control decades ago, I was really inspired by, the women who filed a case against the industry. They were the flight we used to call them flight stewardess, right? For secondhand smoke on the airplanes. And I think that's a really powerful message. And I think we should be building on things like that, right? I mean, women have stereotyped roles, right? They serve on airplanes and then they get exposed to this secondhand smoke, and then, you know, slowly they die. And then if they're empowered to file cases, to speak up, you know, that's really inspiring. And so I think a lot more of these stories needs to come out and inspire more people to join the advocacy. And I'm with Patricia that really the issue is bringing on the women's group into our cause. And partly, as I said, I think the sustainable financing that the women's group can benefit from is a good come on. But at the same time, I think they need to hear more stories like this, right? So more testimonials from the women victims who were affected. So I think that's also missing.
Thank you, Debbie. Over to you, Kelsey.
So I'm just going to start off our concluding statements here, I think. So I just wanted to say that I'm such a fan of all of your work, and so many of you have been inspirations for me. I'm a little bit more of a newcomer to the field, so thank you all for your work. I don't want to sound like a fangirl here, but I'm so honored to be on this webinar. It's such an impressive group of women, and I'm so happy to have spent International Women's Day with you. So now we'll go around and just give everyone a moment for concluding messages here. Debbie, I think you spoke first, so why don't we go to you first?
Thank you so much. I think in tobacco control, many courageous women have already broken the bias, making it easier for women to chart a career or start an advocacy. And many strong women leaders are behind the work to save lives, and it starts with countering tobacco industry interference. There are many men in tobacco control, and they've become really excellent mentors, even for me. So I'm with you on this one, and they've empowered women. So for me, in tobacco control, we're very lucky to have those kinds of men. On our part, I think more can be done if, you know, we work together. So only a few really in tobacco control have managed to mobilize, for instance, mothers, as Mawa was saying. We can work together, I think, to do more. I think we can put together a package to find a way to bring in that sector. And we can leverage on our global networking. I think tobacco control has a distinct advantage of having, you know, a very strong global bond. It starts with the fact that we have a framework convention that requires advocates and health officials from all over the world to convene at least every 2 years around the COP. And I want to say that, you know, when I started in tobacco control, some of my first tobacco control friends that I made were from different parts of the world. And now I'm really delighted to say that we are a global family. So I hope to see more young women join this global family, and that, you know, they will be standing on the shoulders of great women that I showed you today. So thank you and happy Women's Day.
Manuel, do you want to go next?
Merci Kelsey. Moi, je dirais globalement qu'il y a 3 messages que j'ai envie de retenir de nos échanges.
I would say there's 3 messages I want to conclude with. First is that we can act on consumption, and we can see that many women are engaged in that struggle. So that would be the first thing, that we can make it. The second thing is that we have so much is still to be done, and we need to be careful. We need to be careful because we're facing an industry that it's pretty offensive in our strategies, specifically in her strategy toward women's and young women's with their new products. So we need to be aware, and we need to be ready to resist as a health and civil society actors to this really strong offensive. And I think the third thing I want to say is that we need to be engaged in this struggle and others, because this is how we can keep going.
Thank you. Celine, a few closing thoughts?
Yes, thank you very much, Kelsey. So it's been a pleasure and an honor to be part of this great panel in this discussion. And I just want to close by, stating that we, as women, we make half of the global population. We are a strong, movement, and we have, a strong voice. And tobacco control is a development issue. Tobacco control is a public health issue. And as women, we are at the center of it all, considering all the risks that we face as a result of tobacco use and even being targets of the tobacco industry. And the time to act is now, especially in the era we are in of these new technology products that are specifically targeting women and children. And therefore, we should take this as a renewed call and to re-energize for our governments and the tobacco control actors that we need to collaborate even further to implement policy interventions that actually address and protect women from the harmful effects of tobacco products and from the predatory practices of the tobacco industry. Yeah, thank you very much, Kelsey. Back to you.
Thank you. Nyla?
I'm sorry. I'm going to just say it again. Women's races have the society and influence the second half. There is no way around it. We are the base of every building block in the country and all the changes that can take place. Bear in mind, of course, the NGOs, 70% almost, they are women's and they, even though they might not be the leading in the societies, but at least they are the soldier and behind all the changes. We need to step it up and we need to work harder and we need to do more work and we need to stay connected together in order to see the change coming for the next generation. Thank you very much. Back to you, Kelsey.
Thank you. And Patricia, and then back to Sharon.
Yes, I want to close by bringing attention to some fantastic work that happened by a young attorney named Belén Rios. Belén passed recently at age 37 from very aggressive breast cancer. And she led an effort in Argentina to include a recommendation in tobacco control when they were doing the monitoring work of the Women's Anti-Discrimination Treaty that many of the countries in my region are signatories, our state. And that was some of the best work we have seen in terms of really bringing together the women's movement and the tobacco control movement. And they gave a recommendation to the government saying you have a serious issue of consumption of tobacco products among women. The health impact is profound. It is a human rights issue. So I want to remember Belén today, and I want to thank her for this. And I want this and her to be an inspiration for the work ahead on the issues of women and tobacco. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you so much, ladies. So ladies and gentlemen, here we've had it all. We've witnessed the tremendous work being done by the women in tobacco control. Throughout the webinar today, we've had the experience of women who are against all odds have actually recorded major accomplishments in their tobacco control journey. We are hopeful that the exchange today will actually see more young girls and young women and women generally being ushered into tobacco control work. So as we celebrate International Women's Day today, it is important to remember that involving and allowing women to lead is not just the right thing to do. It is also a smart thing to do. Women have and will continue to effect significant change in every aspect of life. To see more of this, we need a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination. We need a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive. A world where differences are actually valued and celebrated. As the African proverb says, if you empower a woman, you empower a nation. As mentioned earlier, the recording will be available in the languages that I've mentioned, French, Spanish, and English. And please feel free to listen to the recording all over again to find inspiration in your work in tobacco control. Once again, we thank you all for joining, and we thank ATCA and the FCA for this great initiative. And we hope to see more and more of similar exchanges. Let us break bias in our communities, in our workplaces, and let us give women the opportunity to lead and excel in tobacco control. Thank you for joining us today, and goodbye.